Welcome. Welcome everybody who is joining our board meeting. We are going to get started in just a minute. I'm waiting on all of our attendees to join the webinar. So we'll give everybody just a minute to get started. Looks like people are still joining. All right, and it is 5:30, so we will go ahead and get started. It is Tuesday, February 8th at 5:30. We are here for our regular board meeting of the Vancouver School District. The first thing we are going to do is do the roll call. Director Decker.
I am here.
Director Smith.
Here.
Director Sproul.
Here.
And Director Zavala.
Here.
And I am Director Barrows, also here. We are all here. We are going to go ahead and start with our agenda. The first thing that we have on our agenda tonight is our superintendent report.
Thank you, Director Barrows. Jefferson, could you enable screen sharing for me? Thank you. So I'll start this evening with the superintendent's report. Welcome everyone to the February 8th meeting. It's hard to believe that we're here in February already, and the weather has felt a little more springy than February, so that's been appreciated. So tonight I have three topics that I want to update you on. Well, two in the superintendent's report really, and then a short legislative update, and then turn it over to Kathy Everidge for the next agenda item with our Employee Excellence Awards. So related to the legislative session, we actually are at the halfway point of the session. It's a short session, so 60 days. There are some cutoff benchmarks for legislation moving forward, and then action kind of moves to the floor caucuses as they work through the rest of this session. There's a scheduled revenue forecast to be released on February 16th. The revenue has been trending in a very positive direction in the state, so it's not a situation where there's budget deficits or anything like that. Obviously, there's a lot of great need too in the state in a lot of different areas as a result of the pandemic. So our legislators have a challenge ahead of them to adopt a budget and to conclude the session. It is scheduled to conclude on March 10th. And sometimes when you're in a session, you start to hear rumors that there could be an extension to the session. And there has been no rumors of that. So that's good news. As you all know, in the budget cycle, understanding what the legislature has done greatly affects what we do as a school district in the following year. So having that wrapped up on time is really helpful to the process. In our last study session, we talked a little about the budget enrollment staffing process. And so as we continue these board meetings, if the public is interested in how we work towards an adopted budget, pretty much regularly in each meeting, there'll be some sort of budget staffing enrollment update as we move forward towards July, August approval. So on the pandemic front, just a couple of updates. This is the usual slide that I present to you. We actually, for the first time, saw our rates start to turn again, which is positive news. Obviously we've seen a huge impact because of the Omicron variant in our community. We're also starting to see some shifts in mitigation strategies. Yesterday, Oregon announced that they were going to stop their inside mask requirements, including K-12, at the end of March. And so we're paying attention to that. Certainly, we're hearing some rumblings in our state about how do we manage this moving forward. Throughout each of these kinds of bumps in this journey that we've been on, there have been different responses, and we've learned more about situations, and we've evolved practices. And so I anticipate that we're heading into another shift. And so I'll keep you posted on that. And certainly this is an item that a lot of people have a lot of focus on and want to know. So at this point, there's nothing changed in our state, but certainly we'll continue to monitor and update you. Our cases, this slide has basically stayed the same the last several weeks, except I update the dashboard. And as you know, we do that every Wednesday, and the school dashboards are updated daily, and we're still seeing a lot of cases. The good news is that relatively speaking, when we go through all those cases, that very few have a linkage to a school transmission. But trying to keep up with that, trying to do all the contact tracing has been really challenging for our staff, and just want to continue to compliment them. It's a difficult process. It's difficult for families to be notified they're a close contact, and we're hoping that we're getting towards the end of this process in some way. This is, I've been showing student attendance and staff attendance data. And because we've collected data now over a month period of time, it was kind of, I had needed to move it beyond a chart and turn it into a graph for you. And you can see where we were really impacted at the student attendance level there in the mid-January. And then we bounced back and actually come back a little higher now than we started after winter break. And you can see that that's been a pretty consistent trend. Typically drops happen on Monday, Fridays, and consistency more in the middle of the week. So we're really excited about that. Having 85, 86% of our students on site is really important, obviously, to the learning process. Similarly with our staff, this is a little different look. This is the absent rate. So we want this to go down. We want the other graph to go up. And we're seeing again that that January, actually a little before our staff were hired and the students kind of followed with some attendance impact, but we have been trending in the right direction, and so have not had to implement any more contingency plans at this point. And so just kind of moving ahead as we have since January 31st. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions related to the pandemic before I talk about the equity policy. Okay, thank you. So before I turn it over to Janelle, I just want to, some people may be joining us for the first time this evening, and others may have been with us along the ride over the last 8-9 months as we've been working on this policy. And so sometimes I still get asked, why a student equity policy, why is that important? And I think there's been a belief communicated from you, certainly to us as staff, that we benefit when all of our students succeed. Like, we don't want to leave anyone behind. Each one has value, can contribute to our community. We want them to feel important and a part of our plans right now and in the future. And we have looked at a lot of data over this journey, and we certainly can improve in supporting our student success. There's lots to celebrate in the district, and there's lots of opportunities. And the discrepancies that we've looked at really demonstrate that our students experience our schools in different ways. And some have been really benefiting from the models that we have, and we want to sustain that and continue that. And others haven't benefited the same. And so this policy is not about taking away anything from anyone. It's about really making sure that each student has a really positive experience in our K-12 system and can move on and contribute to our community or beyond, right? And so as we've looked at that data and the discrepancies, it's clear that there are great opportunities ahead of us. And I've heard consistently from the board that we need to hold ourselves as staff accountable to the opportunities that we create in the way we welcome and support students. And we know that students learn better when they have a strong relationship with their staff, when they feel like they're welcome, when they feel like they're included. And so that's the goal of the equity policy. And sometimes when we've heard comments in the past that, we don't want to lower standards, we don't want to lower expectations, we don't want to take away things from anyone. And this policy is not talking about that at all. In fact, in my experience is I've had a close relationship with someone, or they've known me and recognized me. That's when my accountability goes through the roof, right? I don't want to let them down. I want to work harder for them in those situations. So that's really what we're trying to capture in this student equity policy is a commitment to each of our students and families that we want to be there for them. And we want to support them. And that's a journey that never ends because student needs continue to evolve. And so I just wanted to paint that context. And then I want to turn it over to Janelle, who has done an amazing job really leading this effort. And she's going to talk a little about the timeline that led us to tonight, give you some data points, and then that will wrap up the superintendent report this evening. So Janelle, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, good evening. My name is Janelle Ephraim, and I'm the Chief Equity Officer, and I'm excited to be here with you tonight as our Board of Directors will be voting to approve our proposed policy. I wanted to start by revisiting our timeline. Last month, I had an opportunity to share our equity journey with you, but tonight I want to thank you for your feedback and engagement along this journey. The policy that our board will vote on has been informed in various ways for the last several years. You began as community members to engage and share feedback when we began our equity audit last spring. This timeline shows various ways we have accessed stakeholder input this year. To date, you have engaged and shared your feedback in various ways. Next slide, please. Thank you. We've engaged our community equity advisory groups on 16 separate occasions. This includes our Discipline Equity Steering Committee and our Equity Advisory Committee. These groups are tasked with being a liaison or a two-way conduit of information to our diverse communities and informing our school district programs and policies. We've engaged internal and external stakeholders in over 80 different sessions. These sessions include focus groups, listening sessions, and one-on-one interviews. We've shared information at our town hall this fall, and this information continues to be available on our website in Spanish, Russian, Chuukese, and English. Over 7,000 stakeholders participated in the Climate and Culture Survey last spring, and hundreds of those participants shared individual feedback via comments. We wanted to be real intentional about who was sharing the feedback, and so we had staff members, including our interpreter translators, reach out to hundreds of families, encouraging them to participate in the survey. This deemed fruitful, as almost half of our survey participants were parents, many of which were parents of color or parents who spoke a language other than English at home. Our most recent engagement opportunities have been using our thought exchange tool. Over 800 thoughts have been shared with us regarding equity this year. Next slide, please. I wanted to take a moment and highlight some of the thoughts that were shared, particularly by some of our students. One of our students states, "I think it's important that each student feels welcome, safe, and comfortable. I feel this is important because I think each student should want to come to school and look forward to having a great day with their friends and staff." Another student stated, "I know as a student of color, it's hard to walk through my education and be encouraged to succeed when I have almost no teachers that look like me." And one last comment that I wanted to share by students is our equity policy allows others to speak up about what we can do about making our community whole. Next slide, please. This slide shows our goals, and they were developed as a direct result of stakeholder feedback. They help us to ensure that each of our students develops knowledge and skills and engage at high levels in our schools. Our community asked us to respond and focus our goals around student learning for every student, ensuring that we have a climate and culture where all students belong, getting resources to spaces that are needed most, where they are needed most, evaluating and rethinking curriculum and instructional practices, applying an equity lens to decision-making, and looking at professional development, particularly our hiring, retention, and promotion practices. Next slide, please. As you review or have reviewed the policy, I want you to keep in mind that a policy really gives us parameters for decision-making, but leaves room for flexibility. But our procedures, which will be finalized in the spring, help us to understand the how. They will provide step-by-step instructions on specific ways in which we will incorporate equity within our system. Again, I'm excited to be here and excited to have the opportunity to see our board vote tonight on this equity policy. It is absolutely a time in our system that is historic. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to be here.
Thank you. Next, were there any, I guess, questions for Janelle? Okay, next on the agenda, we have special recognitions, and that will be Kathy Everidge.
Good evening, Board of Directors, as well as Dr. Snell and our community. It's that time again to recognize our February 2022 Employee Excellence Awards. The following employees were selected by a committee of their peers for commitment to the students and staff of Vancouver Public Schools. This month, recipients were among the many outstanding nominees who create a caring environment and positive workplace through their exceptional efforts. For information about each recipient or to submit a nomination, please visit the district's website at vansd.org. The first recipient we are honoring tonight is Eric Bindwald. He was hired August 2013. He's a teacher librarian at Sacagawea Elementary. What started out as a rough Monday for one Sacagawea student turned into a great day. After staying home initially, the student and parent watched the school's news show from home. Seeing Eric discuss books that were available in the library transformed the student's outlook, turning tears into a smile. When the news concluded, the students said they wanted to go to school after all to learn about the books that Eric had highlighted. Congratulations to Eric. Next, I'd like to recognize Mindy Ding, hired September 2013, nurse at Marshall Elementary. During her time at Marshall, Mindy responds to the varying medical needs among the school's approximately 400 students. Her work includes creating and updating individual healthcare plans for the school's youngest special education students and students who have complex medical needs. She administers medications and helps students manage health conditions. Mindy also responds to and monitors everything from students' immunizations to illnesses and injuries that could impact students' learning. Her efforts are vital to a successful school experience at Marshall Elementary. Congratulations, Mindy. Next, I'd like to recognize Tom Edwards, who was hired in June 2010, building operator for Jason Lee Middle School. Tom and his team have perfected the art of flexibility over the past 2 years. Since the pandemic began, they have worked hard to prevent and mitigate the spread of COVID-19, including installing plexiglass barriers and thoroughly cleaning the entire school, to name just a few duties. Tom's efforts help ensure that Jason Lee Middle School is a safe environment for students and staff members. Said his nominator of Tom and his team, they make our lives much easier. Congratulations, Tom. Next is Courtney McEwen, who was hired in August 2001, instructional coach at Heights Campus. As Vancouver Virtual Learning Academy and Heights Campus have expanded, so has Courtney's role. She secures materials for students and staff members and is integral to programs running smoothly. Courtney also mentors teachers. Said one, there has never been a time that I have sent a request for help that she has not made time for me. Her passion to help others really touches me. A common saying at Heights Campus is, thank goodness we have Courtney. Congratulations, Courtney. And finally, I would like to recognize Sarah O'Mara, who was hired in July 2013, teacher at Alki Middle School and Skyview High School. Students grow musically and personally in Sarah's orchestra classes. She is a trusted adult that students can count on for support and advocacy, and she maintains a great rapport with them. Sarah also challenges her students' musical abilities. As a result, many of them have gone on to earn spots in state performance groups and receive accolades. Just as importantly, they gain a love of music that will carry them with them long after they graduate. Congratulations to Sarah. And those are our February Employee Excellence Award winners this month.
Perfect, thank you. And congratulations to our wonderful staff that we are recognizing this month. Next on the agenda, we have audience participation. And so for audience participation, this is when we hear citizen comments. Citizen comments is the time in our meeting where the board and staff like to hear comments from the public. Because most matters do require fact finding and review, the board is not able to respond to any public comments made at this time. Additionally, the state's Open Public Meetings Act restricts deliberation on topics that have not been placed on the publicly noticed agenda in advance. If follow-up action is necessary, the board will ask the superintendent to work with our staff to consider the information and respond accordingly. Speakers are expected to be respectful. Personnel complaints and personal attacks are not permitted. We ask that personnel complaints be submitted in writing. Speakers will be promoted to panelists as I call their name. Please state your name and your affiliation with the district for the record. You will have 3 minutes to make your comments. If you hear a chime, please conclude your remarks. You will also notice that we will have a visual timer on the screen too, just to help you track with time. If you have materials or additional comments you would like for us to review, please submit those to vpsboard.directors@vansd.org. That information will be shared with the superintendent and board. The board appreciates, listens, and cares about the broad range of perspectives in our community, and we thank you for your comments. If you have signed up for public comments too, if you could also make sure that your screen name reflects the name that you signed up with, just so that we can easily identify you to promote you as panelists. And the first person that we have signed up for public comment is Hanuri Kim. I don't know that I saw.
He is not present in the list right now.
Okay. And then next we have Alan Addington.
The same for Ellen.
Okay, there were a couple of people that signed up right after the last board meeting, so I wasn't sure if that was for this one. The next person on the list is Elizabeth Garonsky.
Voting now.
All right, Elizabeth, once it looks like you're promoted, you can unmute yourself. And if you'd like, you can turn on your video. You don't have to. But if you could state your name and affiliation with the district, and you will have 3 minutes.
Hi, sorry. Mom here with multiple kids, 3 of which are in the district. I was wanting to speak about the bus driver shortage. Mostly that affected my high school student who is in VSAA, so it affected her twice. It affected her the very first week because she buses to McLaughlin, and I had to be her bus driver to McLaughlin to catch the other bus to VSAA. And then, sorry, of course, chaos, right, when you call my name. And then it affected her the week she was on remote. When I pulled up to McLaughlin the very first day, a parent had been waiting and handing out letters about contacting the board. I didn't really see an action in there. So my action piece is, I feel like, well, I know the bus driver shortage has been happening longer than the pandemic. We've been short bus drivers since before 2020. So my one was, I thought about it, like, how do you get more bus drivers? I looked up the time the bus drivers start. They start at 5:40 in the morning, which I understand because high school starts at 7:30. But daycares don't open that early. There's a few daycares that open at 5:30, but the bulk open at 6. And so my only suggestion as a parent and as a community member is possibly considering starting school later so that daycares are open for parents who want to be bus drivers to have access to daycare to watch their young children so they can do the job that our community needs. My only other thought about how to get more bus drivers is in a community I lived in before, they contracted with the city bus community, you know, like in this case, it'd be C-Tran. So I didn't know if it was possible to have some sort of agreement with C-Tran when we're short bus drivers to pull from them to have extra bus drivers. And those are my two thoughts about hopefully having enough bus drivers so we can keep everybody in school. And those are my concluding comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Next on the list, we have Danielle Mosier.
Is not present.
Okay. Next, we have Alexa Cruz Cortez.
Promoting them.
All right, Alexa, you've been promoted. Oh, yep, you can unmute yourself. If you'd like to turn on your camera, you can. When you are ready, if you could state your name and affiliation with the district, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Great, thank you. My name is Alexa. I'm a student at Fort Vancouver High School. So I want to start off by saying thank you to the chair and the board members for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts. I speak as both a student in the underserved community and as the president of the cultural club MECHA, which is Movimiento Estudiantil Chicanx de Aztlán, at Fort Vancouver High School Center for International Studies. I'm speaking on behalf of my club in support of adopting the equity policy but I also have some suggestions for further action. We agree with essential programs being accessible to all, and it should be a priority that these commitments go through as promised. As a MECHA and Black Student Union member, I can confidently say that cultural clubs are underfunded and not given the same respect and credibility as clubs like NHS and Key Club. If the district is truly committed to equity, they should also make sure proposals and commitments are being enforced. In the second section of the district commitments, it talks about preparing students to thrive and having an equitable educational experience. In addition to funding for cultural clubs, MECHA believes that we need diverse perspectives both in our curriculum and in the teaching staff. According to the Learning Policy Institute, it's not just students of color who benefit from being taught by teachers of color. White students reported feeling academically challenged and cared for by their teachers of color. I represent the students in my club when I emphasize that it is long past time to put focused effort into diversifying curriculum, materials, staff, and administration for the benefit of all students. Being from Portland, there is like a super big dramatic difference in not only the curriculum and diversity in the staff, but even in the library. Books for people of color or written by people of color are much less accessible to students here in the district, even at Fort, which is the Center for International Studies. I'm now going to speak on the commitments in the policy draft. In Commitment 3, it states that we should have an increased community voice, and it is vital for Fort and other Title I schools that are actually community schools instead of just saying they are. Some ideas for you to consider are night classes for GED, citizenship classes, parent education, and other extended learning opportunities, not just for students, but for the community. I see that I'm running out of time, so I just want to end this by saying I speak on behalf of over 100 students. Please do your job, do the right thing, and take action on your promises. We support the adoption of the equity policy and recognize it as the first step in our important in an important process of change. MECHA, the UW, and Southwest Washington LULAC looks forward to sharing the table with decision makers going forward and offering our lived experiences and student perspectives. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alexa. Next on the list, we have Wesley Van. All right, Wesley, you can unmute yourself. It looks like you're promoted on the panelist list. And state your name and affiliation with the district, and you can begin when you're ready.
My name is Wesley Van, she, her, and I am an equity coach for Vancouver Public Schools, and I will be yielding my time to my colleague, Marina Heights.
Perfect, thank you. Next on the list, we have Marina Heights.
Promoting.
All right, Marina, when you are ready, you can unmute yourself and state your name and affiliation with the district, and you will have 6 minutes.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, Dr. Snell, members of the board and community members. My name is Marina Heights. My pronouns are she, her, ella, and I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the ancestral lands of the Chinook, Cowlitz, and many other tribes that made their home along the Columbia River. I am part of the newly developed Equity Specialist Instructional Coach team here in the Vancouver Public School District. However, I'm not new, as this is my 8th year in the district, previously as a classroom teacher in the Spanish dual language program here as well. My purpose tonight is to share the support of the equity team for this equity policy and the positive impacts we've experienced in the schools. As many of you know, in 2018, the Washington State Attorney General's Office reviewed discipline data and found that Vancouver Public School District suspended or expelled students at a rate higher than the state average. The review also concluded that the district's practices disproportionately affected Black, African American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander students, as well as students with disabilities. With the equity policy and procedures in place, the immediate outcome is a new standard for how Vancouver Public Schools is going to be held accountable for what is reflected in the mission and vision as stated in the Vancouver Public Schools equity policy. This is a commitment within the equity policy and procedure that will provide a roadmap for day-to-day operations, maintaining accountability, and guidance for future decision-making. Cobb and Crown Apple write in Belonging Through a Culture of Dignity that equity and inclusion is not a strategy to help people fit into systems and structures that exist in our societies. It's about transforming those systems and structures to make it a better place for everyone. One of the highlights of this work in the district is that our most vulnerable communities, including our students and families, have had an increased opportunity to share their voices. Our individual perspectives are important and deserve multiple opportunities to be invited to participate and be heard. This equity policy increases that opportunity and asks the district to engage, hear, consider, and reflect on the many voices found within our most underserved community members. Listening to those voices has challenged all of us as educators to examine our own implicit and explicit biases towards historically underserved communities. When we empower all voices within our community, we will ensure that every student has full and equitable participation in decision-making, planning, and next steps. Some of the other highlights of the equity policy include, as a school district, we'll be held accountable to consider school finance reforms that give additional resources and higher needs settings to increase success for students of color, students with disabilities, multilingual learners, and students living in poverty. As a school district, we'll be held accountable for examining our own curriculum and instructional practices. The equity policy and procedures will identify the need to respond to our students with inclusive and equitable practices that include the historical perspectives of each individual cultural lens of the students that we serve. Additionally, accountability should include examining and re-examining common sets of data that will demonstrate progress for groups of students who have been traditionally underserved. And finally, the policy and procedures that will follow are the foundations for transforming Vancouver School District into an equitable and inclusive system for all. We understand that this transformation will not happen in 1 year or 2 years and should not be limited by a temporary funding stream or initiative. As quoted by a VPS student, are we here to talk about equity work or do equity work? We as a team support this equity policy and are committed to continuing this work for as long as it takes. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. Next on the list, we have Marlena Shaw. So Marlena, you can unmute yourself, turn on your camera if you'd like, and state your name, affiliation with the district, and begin when you're ready.
Yeah, I'm Marlena Shaw. I have 2 students in Vancouver Public Schools, and I yield my time to Sally Snyder.
Okay, thank you. Next on the list is Patty Page.
Promoting.
All right, Patty, yeah, you can unmute and state your name, affiliation with the district, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I am Patty Page. I'm a parent of former students of the Vancouver School District and a faithful school levy voter. And I'm motivated to comment tonight in favor of this proposal for the equity policy after listening to prior testimony. I encourage this board to adopt the equity policy under consideration tonight. It addresses inequities that have existed in countless forms from the founding of our country. These inequities have been and continue to be just as self-evident as our aspirational values, the prime ones being the unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Inequity is also obvious in the way the rights our Constitution purports to guarantee to all citizens, but have been intentionally withheld from some. In law and in practice, we have fallen far short of these values. This is historically verifiable. Pride and patriotism and the misuse of slogans can blind us to our flaws. Thinking of prior testimony, we can argue over whether it's helpful to call them victims, those who experience inequity firsthand, but that no way subtracts from the need to take positive, deliberate action to neutralize the inequity. And yes, we can point to many who have achieved success despite inequity. Success is not always impossible, but that does not relieve us from the moral obligation to repair the damages done by inequity and from preventing future damage. Removing those unequal obstacles from the path of every student is the right thing to do. This policy addresses those obstacles in direct, practical ways that will be fair to all students and beneficial to all students. Please do adopt this policy, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Patty. Next on the list, we have Sydney Clark.
Promoting.
All right, Sydney, it looks like you have been promoted. When you are ready, if you'd like to turn your camera on, you can.
Yes, I'm on.
Perfect. So if you could state your name and affiliation with the district, and you'll have 3 minutes. You can start when you're ready.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Sydney Clark, and I have a son that attends Vancouver School District at Hudson Bay High School. And my comments actually
Sydney, I think you got muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes. But I think you might be freezing. I can't hear you anymore.
Yeah, I did. Can you?
I think you might not have a great connection. It's kind of coming in and out and your screen appears frozen.
Sometimes if the video turns off, then the quality improves for audio.
That's partly why I've been turned my video off, is because my connection is.
Sydney, we heard you better with the camera off, but you could try unmuting yourself. I'm sorry, I don't hear you. Oh, well, I thought maybe you were unfrozen for a minute. Sydney, can you try unmuting yourself and seeing if we can hear you? And it could work better too.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'll be quick. So yes, my name is Sidney Clark, son in the Vancouver School District, and my comments is in support of the equity policy for the Vancouver School District. I really want to thank the equity officer through this process, and I do want to thank Superintendent Dr. Snell and the board for having the courage to take on this task and move the district in the direction where we all know where we need to go. And I know it's going to be some challenges ahead, but I really commend the school board and I commend Dr. Snell and the equity officer for having the courage again to move forward, and it's time to go to work. And I have one quote that I would like to do, is from W.E.B. Du Bois. And he quotes, "Now is the accepted time, not tomorrow, not some more convenient season. It is today that our best work can be done, and not some future day or future year," end quote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sydney. Next on the list, we have Jasmine Tolbert.
Promoting.
Hi, Jasmine. If you could state your name and affiliation with the district, and you will have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Hello, Vancouver School Board. My name is Jasmine Tolbert. I use she, her pronouns, and I have the pleasure of serving as the president of the NAACP Vancouver branch. I'm here to speak in support of the proposed equity policy. You've heard for many pieces, so I'll keep it pretty high level. All in all, I appreciate your stance to implement a specific equity policy to ensure that your diversity, equity, inclusion, and excellence in education directives are carried out. Having a policy like this in place ensures that all of your students are met where they are at and their needs to thrive in society. Specifically within this policy, I really appreciate the pieces on this commitment also means that diversity of our students and community is acknowledged, affirmed, and integrated into learning and school culture. So many of our students' success has wavered due to their identities not being affirmed within the education they receive. So knowing this could be the standard moving forward will definitely bring joy to the heart of this community. I also appreciate the piece that states the district is guided by the belief that educational equity benefits every student, which in turn benefits our entire community. We embrace a concept of educational equity that goes beyond formal equality, where every student is treated the same, to fostering an educational environment where every student is supported and has the opportunity to benefit equally. It's really, I just want to say it's really unfortunate that some in our community may not have had the opportunity to understand that concept of equity and how it supports all to the fullest. But I appreciate that making huge stances like adopting a policy like this will hopefully help those that are still grasping this concept to really understand and embrace it even further. All in all, the NAACP Vancouver branch firmly believes that when equity wins, we all win, and we stand with you in moving forward with this equity policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. Next on the list, we have Richard Erickson.
He is not present.
Okay, we will move on to Bobby Evenson.
Promoted.
All right, Bobby, it looks like you have been promoted. You can unmute yourself and state your name and affiliation with the district, and you will have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Bobby Evenson. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. I've been listening to people come on and talk about what they like about the equity policy, and I've been coming to the meetings. This is my 9th meeting that I've attended, because when the whole equity policy procedure started, I was concerned and confused about what equity is versus equality. And I liked what Jasmine had to say about, if this is going to benefit all students in our community, it will benefit our community. I haven't heard it that way. I've felt a little bit skeptical about the equitable outcome of all students, because I think different kids put in different amounts of effort. Each person has different abilities. When I hear equitable outcome, maybe I'm thinking equal outcome. I've been asking the last couple of meetings, and I've reached out with Janelle, wanting to be more involved. I didn't get invited to a workshop. I feel like I wasn't reached out to at all at the very beginning when this was starting. It was posted that there would be opportunities to do workshops and webinars, and I was not part of any of those. And I regret that I wasn't reached out to. Janelle did have some conversation with me, and that's good, but I hope, because I believe that tonight you guys are going to vote it through. It's not a question. I watched last meeting. Everybody seems very excited about it. And Janelle said at the beginning of this meeting, when the board approves this,
I voted.
I'm sorry. So it's going to be voted on, and it's going to be voted through. And I do hope that it does do good things for our community. I see there's a lot of hope for it. So if that's the case, that's great. I hope it does benefit all of our kids, and that all of our kids are safer for it. So thank you.
Thank you, Bobby.
I just want to apologize. I thought I was muted. So I apologize to Bobby for interrupting her time. So
thank you.
Sorry.
Next on the list, we have Wendy Moose.
Promoted.
Right, Wendy, it looks like you have been promoted. If you could unmute yourself and state your name and affiliation with the district, you will have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. Hi, my name is Wendy Moose, and I'm a teacher, and I would like to donate my time to Chase Kirkpatrick. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list, we have LaDonna Kirkpatrick.
Promoted.
LaDonna, you can unmute yourself and state your name and affiliation with the district, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, I am going to donate my time to Chase Kirkpatrick, and I'm a parent. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list, we have Jade Kirkpatrick.
Do not see Jade in the list. They may be sharing a screen with Chase though.
I see a Jade Phillips. I don't know if that's the same person. Let's go ahead and Chase Kirkpatrick is next.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. And is Jade Kirkpatrick there with you?
She's Jade Phillips is how she joined. So there's
Oh.
a legal name, and then there's the name she likes to use, and it sounds like she logged in with her legal name.
Okay. Let's promote. Keep Chase promoted. Let's promote Jade really quick.
Oh, she's right next to me.
Oh. Jade, if you are there, if you could.
I am a student from Skyview, and I donate my time to Chase Kirkpatrick.
Okay, and that was Jade Kirkpatrick?
It was.
Okay, so Chase, you are next on the list, and you will have 12 minutes.
All right, I'm Chase Kirkpatrick. I'm a Clark County resident, and I'm a parent of students in Vancouver schools. There's a threat to equity and academic authenticity today. Not so much here, but it seems like it might be coming. I probably don't need to remind anyone that no K-12 program teaches critical race theory as an advanced concept for students pursuing graduate and postgraduate degrees in sociology and law. Middle and high school would be an inappropriate forum. Yet extremist groups across the US are winning ceremonial victories, outlawing the teaching of a concept they don't understand in schools that never taught it in the first place. They seem to be fighting in reality to revise history the way they see fit, to create flimsy pretexts to fire and possibly prosecute educators, and to undermine the constantly evolving policies developed to set right nearly 160 years of post-Civil War systematic, deliberate oppression, still ongoing today. These victories have already come at a price. Banned books in Texas, Kentucky, Tennessee, Missouri, a proposed Florida state Senate bill that would prohibit teaching topics in a way that might make students feel uncomfortable. Seriously, Florida Senate Bill 148, it's a real thing, and it's a little bonkers. If history and social studies don't sometimes make people in America uncomfortable, they're probably not being taught correctly. Our history and our society are full of reasons to be uncomfortable. The last time I addressed this board in person, I spent some time explaining how easy it is to be oblivious to the problem. As from my own point of view, I didn't see the problem for decades, especially through the lens of my own individual rags to humble comparative riches experience, until people better informed than I helped me see it, and afterwards the importance of informed, thoughtful programs that ensure against bias and balance the scales for those at an economic disadvantage. Look what happens when you take it away. At a breakneck pace, states and districts that have done away with their equity pursuits have been racing to restore a pre-civil rights era paradigm, it seems. Say systematic oppression doesn't exist anymore. Say that we don't need equity policy or to take an objective look at the current events and the history that informs it. If the threat is gone, if the threat of racism and white nationalist motivated fascism and the policies that they created in the first place is truly over, why are people rewriting history and banning books today? Haven't we dealt with this already? Not for nothing, throughout civilization, those that have burned books set out to deprive people of knowledge, and philosophically castrated education institutions have never been remembered by history as the good guys. Children who read Mao's usually don't grow up to compare every minor inconvenience to the Holocaust either. It's worth noting for all the people who have addressed this board to argue against equity policy, none have really been experts on the topic. I can't recall a single one that has identified themselves as a credentialed sociologist or practitioner of constitutional law. I've heard a few address the board to support it, but the arguments that come against it come from people who seem to pontificate and quote state laws in ways I think they hope are misinterpreted by people in order to vainly attempt to make their point for them, mostly in an effort to compare mask requirements, testing requirements, and the possibility of COVID vaccine requirements to racial and religious discrimination. I would refer the board and anyone who'd like to read a legal opinion on this topic to Bloomberg Law, the Department of Health and Human Services, and the Society for Human Resources Management. These organizations have endeavored to publish reliable, legally sound articles to advise employers and government agencies on the topics of masks and vaccine requirements in public places and the workplace. All consider this comparison as specious and completely without legal merit. I'd be a little surprised to find out that any adversary of the current proposed equity policy has a qualifying history in sociology or law. A degree in biology, civil engineering, water resources, and forest management, for example, are all respectable accomplishments, but there's literally no overlap between these areas of study in sociology or law. There's a vast difference between the specialization in criminal law per se, or for example, and specializing in constitutional or civil rights law as well. We don't ask our ophthalmologist to manage our diabetes, and we don't ask our plumber to inspect our roof. Both of these professions are experts, but they're not experts on every topic under the sun. I don't have a degree in sociology or law either. I do, however, recognize the vast difference in the value of advice from members in the community who have a stake and of experts on the topic versus the value of the advice of someone talking out their neck. I urge the board not to be persuaded by the tokenism and bad faith arguments of extremists in Clark County. We can't let it happen here. If it's all the same, I'd like to keep the vestiges of Jim Crow, segregation, separate but equal, book banning, witch hunts firmly at bay and where they belong in our history books and our museums. Please continue to shape your policies and procedures on the advice of qualified experts. I'd also like to remind the board that vaccination requirements have been a normal part of modern life for well over a century. Public school attendance, college attendance, international travel, and military service have all been gated by vaccination status as long as we have all been alive. It has never been deemed discriminatory by a qualified legal opinion. Please keep this in mind when considering whether or not to treat the COVID vaccine the same way we treat the MMR, hepatitis B, Tdap, varicella, and polio vaccines. Furthermore, for some of my early life, I didn't have a primary care provider or health insurance, which made the question of where to get vaccinated for school slightly more difficult for me. I'm sure my parents would have found a way. It would have been a challenge, as it would have been a challenge for any family with two working parents who both commuted 60 miles round trip and didn't get home until 6 some nights. Our school districts, in cooperation with our county public health authorities, made it easy for us. They established mobile clinics that popped up at the most high traffic and accessible schools. Any student could line up if they needed to. We have people come here every month to argue against certain aspects of equity policy that consider race and economic circumstances, claiming it makes the problem of racism and inequality worse. Then they use the same equity directives as a bludgeon to demand their privilege be expanded at the expense of those with less, seemingly to say, stop demanding I get tested, stop encouraging us to get vaccinated, make masks a choice. We all understand why that wouldn't work. It seems to say, I demand the right to put other people in physical and financial peril. I want to be able to make them miss work and possibly incur thousands of dollars in medical debt, all because I don't want to be inconvenienced by a piece of fabric and a cotton swab. Please don't Please don't expand their privilege at the cost of others. Oregon is loosening mask requirements soon, not because the threat is over, but because a vaccine will soon be available for the last remaining unvaccinated age group, children under 5. It is important to remember this is a trade-off. Vaccination makes it safe to loosen restrictions. Hopefully, our state and county governments, along with you, will carefully consider student and overall population vaccination rates before following Oregon's lead, lest the most vulnerable among us end up paying a high price for our comfort. Not all of us enjoy the same privilege. These pop-up clinics were a help for us. I urge the board to evaluate the potential need for and feasibility of a similar service. There may be some outcry from people who feel it is an overstep, but I'm sure the district's consultants and legal experts will agree making things more accessible for the poor and those with transportation obstacles falls in line with the spirit of equity. I got a little bit more time than I thought I was going to get. So I think I'd also like to remind you of the historical precedent of quarantine and isolation. One of the most recent historical examples is probably 17th century Europe. I don't know anybody who hasn't heard this story. A little village called Elam, I think, or Eam. There was about 350 people there, and some of them had plague, and they were one of the last villages to have plague. And they volunteered to isolate themselves. They set aside and they stayed away, and they were successful. They didn't spread plague. Only 83 people survived in Eam, but they didn't spread plague to anybody else. There's historical backing dating back to 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 years. A lot of times in religious texts, and I'm not bringing them up as a appealing to religious authority or anything, but rather that they're preserved in such a way that they provide an insight into the minds and lives of people who lived when they were written. And so those texts, they contain instructions for quarantining the sick and those who might have been exposed to sickness. There are cave etchings from over 15,000 years ago that depict people caring for the sick and keeping those sick people separate from the community. Humans have understood the importance of taking special precautions in the face of sickness for millennia. Refusing to allow someone in a public space because they may have been exposed to a pathogen until they can safely be readmitted is not a new thing. And it's in no way ever been considered an invasion or a limit on somebody's individual rights until very recently. Neither is refusing to admit someone to a crowded, closed environment without covering their face when so many people in the community are sick. Humans have been doing this for so long, there's probably no record of when it began. Arguments against these safety precautions are entitled nonsense. I have personally never heard the likes of which, and I hope that you will continue not to let it persuade you to lift safety protocols while the risk is still high. I appreciate how careful you've been, and I ask you to continue being that careful in the future. And that's about all I've got. So please vote yes to pass the equity policy as proposed and continue to shape your policies and procedures with everybody's best interest in mind. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Chase. Next on our list, we have Mary Ball.
Promoting.
All right, Mary, it looks like you have been promoted. You can unmute yourself and state your name, affiliation with the district, and you will have 3 minutes.
Mary Ball, grandmother to 2 children in the district. I'm here tonight to talk about people like me that are hesitant to speak at these board meetings. At the last in-person board meeting, I was there to donate my time to another speaker. But before I did that, I spoke myself for about 30 seconds. I simply stated that I agreed with masking, vaccines, and the proposed testing site at the middle school. I thank the board for trying to keep our kids and families safe. I know we are not supposed to mention anybody by name when we speak, but after that meeting, I learned my name was put on websites which I do not frequent. Along with my name was a derogatory nickname, which was AKA Grand Tifa. I do not belong to any organized groups such as that. The insinuation that I do is totally false and uncalled for. Not only was I called out by name, so were 3 other women donating their time to this same speaker. and they also were dubbed with insulting nicknames. Retaliation on the internet for simply stating one's harmless opinions because others don't agree with it is childish and uncalled for, but it also closes the door for those that do not want their names plastered on social media websites and personally harassed at jobs or elsewhere. The nastiness that takes place at these meetings gets nothing accomplished, and the only ones that suffer in the end is our kids. These meetings are meant for parents to be able to address their concerns that the board actually has control over. Masking and vaccines are not in that realm. They are not meant for throwing tantrums, harassing, nor throwing stones at the board members. Acting civilized would be a refreshment for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Next on the list, we have Sally Snyder. All right, Sally, it looks like you have been promoted. And Sally, you do have 6 minutes since earlier in the meeting, Marlena Shaw yielded her time to you. When you are ready, you please state your name, affiliation with the district, and you'll have 6 minutes.
So Mary.
Okay, so first I would like to say that Richard Erickson is here. If you can promote him, he couldn't get logged in when you were trying to call his name. Is that something you
I
could
am
do?
logged in.
Oh, he was logged in, but
I don't see his name on the list, but if he's there with you, we can get to him when you're finished.
okay, great. Thank you very much. So one thing I'd like to bring up is that there's a restriction that we have to log in by noon in order to give public comment, where when we were in person, you were allowed to go sign up to give public comment during the public comment time. So I'm wondering why now there's a condition where we have to sign up by noon on the day. I would like to talk about agenda items, which I believe is what we're supposed to be doing. And first, I would like to talk about the equity policy. I would ask the board not to adopt the equity policy. On page 3, it states there's a curriculum. The curriculum is not defined. It has not been discussed, and we don't know anything about a curriculum. So how can you pass a policy for curriculum when we don't know what it is? On the equity definition, it says this is for fairness and inclusion, ensuring people have what they need to participate in school and life. On the agenda is the TRIO talent research item to encourage and support secondary school persistence and graduation, promote post-secondary enrollment and attainment, that the board of directors approve the MOA agreement between the district and WSUV. WSUV will provide 2 full-time college access coaches and part-time tutors within each of the participating high schools, Fort Vancouver and Bay. How is this fair and inclusive? Not all schools are participating. Why are only 2 high schools participating? The equity policy states what they need to participate in school and in life, but we're excluding kids from different schools. Number 3 on the agenda is to approve 16 new buses for $1,454,000. When schools were shut down because we didn't have buses and we were all sent to remote learning, why could we not have used that money to hire teachers to run the buses? But we're going to buy more buses when we don't have teachers to operate the buses. This money could be spent on drivers. It could also be spent on technology connections. When Columbia River went into their rolling online the first day of school, none of the kids could access the Chromebooks. And I believe that was a district-wide problem because we all received an email stating that the students were not able to attend school that day from home, but not to worry, they wouldn't be counted absent. I would like to talk about the yielding of time that's being removed from the agenda and the draft policies. So on January 11th, the draft policy on page 5 said that it would be basically removed. That line is taken out about yielding of time. Yet on the draft policy for February, there are things added in that were not on the draft policy originally. So how can you add those things in to be approved today when they weren't on the original draft? And those topics are having to give your address is removed, and then whether you reside in the district has been removed, but they have added in with affiliation of the district. So if you're approving that today, what does that mean, affiliation with the district? Do we now have to say if we're a teacher and what school we work at, if our family works for the school district and where they work, or if we're retired from the district, or if we have ever worked at the district? What does affiliation mean if you're adding this information to be approved today? On page 4, it's also added in under public comment proposed. This was not in the January agenda. That there will be a period of time near the beginning of the meeting. It has been removed, and now it says public comment will be provided during the meeting. So again, all these things are added in. They were not in the first draft, they're in the second draft, and now you're going to approve this when it has nothing to do with the yielding of time. These extra things that are in there are not anything to do with yielding the time. The topic under the agenda item still says for January and February, the public comment provision is revised to eliminate yielding of time and to provide fairness and consistency. So if those things that are added could be addressed before you go to approve this, I would appreciate answers to those. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list, we have Katie Bauer, who I believe is there. I don't know if they still are
You're
promoted.
correct. Let me re-promote her.
Yeah, and then if you'll also keep them promoted, because the next person, Kathy Carr, and then Richard Erickson is also, I think, at that same, using that same screen.
Will do.
And actually, I think I did say that Richard could go next. So I think Richard is there. Richard, sorry, I called on Katie, but I did say you could go next. So you can go ahead and go next, Richard. If you could state your name and affiliation with the district, and you will have 3 minutes.
Richard Erickson, Vancouver. Leading epidemiology experts have called for harsh mask rules, and in fact, all mandates should be scrapped. These COVID-19 mandates have contributed to reducing economic activity, raising unemployment, reducing schooling, causing political unrest, contributing to domestic violence, and undermining liberal democracy. These costs to society must be compared to the benefits. The days of 15 days to flatten the curve are long gone. Benefit must always be weighed against risk of harm. Masks are generally unwarranted except to show concern and compliance with overreaching bureaucratic rule makers. Yes, these mask mandates in adults and children have been shown to cause more harm than good. In fact, it is time to conclude that surgical and cloth masks used as they currently are have absolutely no impact on controlling the transmission of COVID-19 virus, and current evidence implies that face masks actually are harmful. And yet here you are, all masked because you were told to do so. The blame is not on you, though I don't even I don't even blame COVID. I do blame the teachers union leadership for continuing to destroy the future educational opportunities of our children. I blame the leadership of our nation's capital. In fact, I blame the leadership in our once great state of Washington. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to represent the concerns of this community? Or are you going to be part of this thoughtless bureaucracy? Fear of infection and possible employment losses place stress on parents. There is constant confusion as science is being ignored and censored. Moreover, researchers find that those children in lower socioeconomic families have been most affected. Equity policy is not going to correct this. Return to equality of opportunity. Masks won't correct this inequality, and forced inoculation of our children with what data is showing to be much greater risk of harm than any potential benefit needs to be scrapped. Children are far less likely to get seriously ill when exposed to the virus. Simply put, children are not the primary drivers of this pandemic. Masks are generally unwarranted. But it should be clear that one important role for government authorities is to provide information so that citizens can voluntarily respond to the pandemic in a way that mitigates this exposure. Following these unwise and politically motivated public health policies are causing great harm. Cost to society must be compared to the benefits of coercive tactics and forced mandates. Who do they benefit? The children are not presently benefiting or being well served by the way the schools of Vancouver are being run. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Richard. And then next we have Katie Bauer. So Katie, if you can state your name and affiliation with the district, and then you will have 3 minutes.
Okay, and I'm going to be short and sweet. Katie Bauer, parent. I took the time to review the agenda and will follow the Public Meetings Act and will speak to the topic of the agenda. I'm saddened by the equity policy that's being voted on today. Last month, finding out that the equity committee members weren't allowed to create the equity policy, but rather were given the policy to review was disheartening. How a member of that committee agrees with that type of policy making is beyond me. It's highly unprofessional. And I hope that in the future, when you convene a committee, you allow them to actually create the policy instead of just give it to them. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda, we have Kathy Carr, who I believe is there with that group.
Yep.
Hi, Kathy. So you, we'll reset the clock. If you could state your name, affiliation with the district, you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Kathy, and I'm a Vancouver resident. So today I want to continue from last week. I spoke to the Open Public Meetings Act, and I want to respond to that a little bit further. I was grateful to get a response from the council on a couple items that I addressed last week. And one of them was condition of attendance. And when we sign up to speak on Zoom, you're required to put in your address and your name, and it's not optional on the site when you're looking at it to sign in. You have to play with it to realize you only have to put in Vancouver, but most people, it doesn't say it's optional, but if you don't put something in, it doesn't let you go to the next level. And that's a condition on the meeting. And council says it's not a condition. Well, it is a condition, and I would be happy to sit down with council or whatever group you want to put together and look at how a public meeting should be run by law. And to put these continued conditions to make it harder and harder, just like here, we're trying to work together and do a Zoom meeting, and it's difficult. It's difficult. Not everybody can do a Zoom, and that's not open to the public. This isn't considered open to the public. So the next thing I want to point out is a disruption in a meeting is not considered a disruption if you disrupt the meeting to say you can't hear. And one of our meetings was adjourned for that very purpose. So that is the only reason that you can disrupt a meeting per the Roberts rules. So another item I want to point out to the board is August 26th of 2021, there's been a revision to the Open Public Meetings Act. And the revision is the school board members can be individually named in lawsuits, and their personal finances may be sought as a remedy. So as I said, I would love to work with somebody on these meetings that we're having to make them open to the public. And I would want to help you guys stand by your oath and stand by the law. A law that is unconstitutional is lawless. Help us help you make that stand. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Next on the list, we have Carrie Van Nostrand.
Nice job.
Good job.
All right, Carrie, it looks like you have been promoted. If you want to unmute yourself, and then you please state your name, affiliation with the district, and you will have 3 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Carrie Van Nostrand. I'm a VPS educator and local president for the Vancouver Education Association. And I'm speaking this evening in support of the board's adoption of VPS's equity policy. I first want to acknowledge gratitude to Chief Equity Officer Ephraim and Superintendent Snell for the intentional runway leading up to policy consideration based on multiple opportunities for communication and presentation to the community, but also with intentional outreach for stakeholder input, educators included, but in recognition of student and family input as well. Just the way that you have rolled out this runway leading up to the policy is giving us a glimpse at how walking your talk might look, as outlined in the numerous commitments included in the draft policy itself. But I also see this equity policy as VPS walking the talk in our longstanding mission statement, where we highlight partnering with home and community, outlined again in one of the commitments referencing increased family and community voice. Another aspect from the VPS mission statement reinforces engagement and empowerment of students. And a great number of the commitments and action plan references align with that very purpose. Another opportunity to diversify student voice as it relates to opportunities to address student issues as well. And then the third and final highlight from the VPS mission statement relates to helping us grow competent, responsible, and compassionate citizens among our students. And just want to recognize that by supporting the implementation of research-based curriculum and instructional practices with a focus on creating cultural connectedness among students, between students and staff, and hopefully mirroring that opportunity for staff is something that I find great promise in. Beyond the clear focus on student impact and outcomes, I hope that this policy is first steps in also mirroring equity and inclusion from a staff experience side of things as well, and appreciate the acknowledgement and value in diversifying our workforce and building the cultural competency of staff, whether classroom teachers or other educators in our realm, in an effort to reach students, each student, as intentionally as possible. And recognizing that the policy is a starting point and that procedures will follow. As a member of the Education Association and as a VPS educator, we look forward to any opportunities to partner, recognizing that we are one stakeholder group of many that should be sharing this table, but we look forward to sharing that space with students and with families, and in helping hold VPS, ourselves included, accountable for the commitments outlined in the policy. So thank you again for the intentional approach and commitment to equitable impact.
Thank you, Carrie. Next on the list, we have Bethany Rivard. Okay, Bethany, it looks like you are promoted. If you could state your name, affiliation with the district, and you will have 3 minutes.
They may still be mid-join. There's no microphone option yet for them.
Okay. There we go. All right, you can unmute yourself. Perfect.
So sorry, I don't know what happened there. All right, thank you so much for the time. Good evening, board members, Superintendent Snell, VPS staff, and community members. My name is Bethany Rivard, and I've been a teacher at Fort Vancouver High School Center for International Studies for the past 16 years. And I am enthusiastically supporting the adoption of the proposed equity policy. In my time at Fort, I've seen how policies that benefit all students when implemented with intention and a student-centered lens can positively benefit students. The draft policy states, as a function of fairness, equity implies ensuring people have what they need to participate in school life and to reach their full potential, and in parentheses it says flourish. And I love that word flourish that's included, because one definition is to develop in a healthier, vigorous way, especially as the result of a particularly favorable environment. So I have some thoughts on what we can do to help students flourish instead of just function. And it's cultivating an environment where students have equitable access. And how can we do that? Some examples that I have noticed in my time at Fort would be that students flourish with the later start times. ITech and VSAA begin at 9:35, and Fort and the other 3 comprehensive high schools start at 7:25. Many students work night shifts in my classes, and the early morning start time robs them of critical rest. And my students deserve to come to school with the ability to be well rested enough to learn. Students flourish with credit opportunities, and I'm asking the district to consider funding all students for dual credit courses such as college and the high schools, because right now we have students falling through the cracks as far as equity is concerned due to their inability to pay for credits. And I believe that every student should have this opportunity. Students also flourish with a high quality performing arts program, not only for magnet schools, but for all comprehensive high schools. It has been shown that students with a robust arts program experienced a 3.6% reduction in disciplinary infractions, improvement of 13% of a standardized deviation in writing scores, and an increase of 8% of a standard deviation in their compassion for others. And these are values that are consistent with our equity policy. Students also flourish with diverse curriculum that mirrors the cultures and histories that comprise our school buildings, and with more educators that reflect the backgrounds of the student population. A student-led club I co-advise, FEHS MECHA, supports, as do I, adding courses such as Latin American literature, Chicano studies, and ethnic studies to start with. Students flourish by being members of an extracurricular club. Right now, teachers volunteer their time to keep these clubs going, and they have no funding for student activities. We should recognize the value of student interest in cultural clubs and promoting to the climate and sense of belonging, which is even more important in our COVID environment. And students flourish when their families are connected to their school environment. Schools could be centers for the community, hosting family events and continuing education for all adults that are interested. And I want to thank all of those who worked on the equity policy and contributed their voice. Like I said, I strongly support the adoption of the policy, and I appreciate everybody who's put their time into it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bethany. I'm looking back through, there were a couple people at the beginning that were not on, Hanuri, Alan, and Danielle, and I do not see any of those people on according to the names on the screen. So I do not believe that those people are here at the meeting. So that concludes our public comment portion of our meeting. Thank you to all who shared their thoughts and comments tonight with the board. We appreciate it. We appreciate hearing from all of you. Now we are going to move into the next portion of our meeting with some action items. The first item on our list is the approval of minutes. Do I have a motion?
Approved.
Oh, I'll make a motion.
I'll second that.
In a second, perfect. Any discussion? All right, we will move for all those in favor of approving the minutes. Director Decker.
Approve.
Director Smith.
I approve.
Director Sproul.
Approve.
And Director Zavala.
Approve.
And the motion passes. Next on the list, we have our consent agenda. Items in our consent agenda, just to remind our public, many of these items were discussed at our committee of the whole meeting that we had in January, where we discussed a lot of the items that are on here. If there are any questions about those, there were some items that we talked about in that meeting. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda items?
I will move.
Thank you.
Sorry, Wendy.
Thank you, Kathy.
I was gonna get it right this time, Kathy.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Director Smith. Is there any discussion about the consent agenda items?
I just want to add one point. I think there was some comment tonight. We are revising policy 1400, which is how we conduct our meetings, and we've discussed this. I think maybe 3 or 4 times in the last year. And the purpose of reviewing policy at multiple subsequent board meetings is for the opportunity for refinement, which is where we landed tonight in our final approval. Again, we have discussed policy 1400, the yielding of time, and how to make our meetings as accessible as possible multiple times in the past 6-8 months.
Any other discussion about consent agenda items? All right, I did want to point out too that the calendar for the next school year, for the 22-23 school year, is part of our consent agenda. I know a lot of families look forward to kind of getting that out there and published for the community just to plan ahead. So if there's no more discussion, we will go to a vote to approve consent agenda items. Director Decker.
I approve.
Director Smith.
Approve.
Director Sproul.
Approve.
Director Zavala.
Approve.
And I also vote to approve, so the motion passes. And I believe I might have forgotten to vote on the last approval of minutes. I also voted for that. After our consent agenda items, next on the agenda, we have regular business. The item here is the recommendation for a second reading of a new policy, policy 10, which is our equity policy. And I believe Dr. Snell, were you going to introduce this item?
Tracy, I just want to make sure, did we get votes on both the consent, both the item G and also item H? G was the instructional and administrative support and H was fiscal support services?
I believe those are all included in the consent agenda.
Thank you. So then
I have on my list.
the regular business item is and this is the second reading of the equity policy that we heard a number of public comments on this evening, and Ms. Ephraim walked us through the process to get here. So I would just turn it over to you as directors to, if you have any conversation about this, and then potentially your consideration for approval.
Okay, perfect. First, we need to have a motion to approve the policy.
I'll move.
Thank you, Director Sproul. And do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion or comments about this agenda item?
I guess I'll start. It has been my great pleasure to watch this equity policy end up where it has. I am incredibly proud of all the work that has been done to make sure that we focus our attention on all of our students' needs, which includes their family needs, and it's all based in the research that we understand for what is good for kids and how do we meet kids where they are, where they come from, and make sure that they all have the opportunities to succeed. In previous comments, there have been some question about equity versus equality, and there's been some comments about dumbing down rather than holding the line on expectations. And if you've read this equity policy, there is none of that. It's actually raising the bar for the adults in the room, as well as holding the bar high for all of the kids, but raising the bar for the adults in the room so that they can support all of the students in our school district and their families so that everybody has a positive outcome. And that can't help but make our community better. And I just have to, the quote that just stuck with me when Ms. Ephraim was giving her rundown of how we got to where we got, I wrote it down. It's like, it will make our community whole. And that is the best explanation I've heard of what our intent for this equity policy is. So that's it.
Dr. Sproul, I see your hand up.
Yeah. I just, I think similar to what has been acknowledged by several of the people making public comment, but Dr. Snell as well, just all the effort that has gone into the process. It's a journey. And I think through that journey of stakeholder engagement, the revisions internally with the board, the conversations with our district team, presentations in our community, I think that it's these conversations, it's the comments we continue hearing at our board meetings that are part of this and really feed into I think a policy that reflects the needs of our community. And so I'm very proud of this policy. I think one thing that was very important to me going in is making sure that we didn't have just words, but we had a clear directive and a way to hold ourselves accountable. And I think one of the aspects that I know as a board member, because we are responsible for the policies, is the level of accountability and the consistent review and renewal of this policy, because this is a living document and it needs to stay relevant and it might evolve and change as the years go on. But I'm really proud of this work, and I'm really glad that we've defined our commitments to what this means. I think we've defined equity very well and articulated kind of what we mean by this. And this is our board work, and now we're passing it off to Dr. Snell and his team. I'm sure will find some wonderful procedures to execute on this, but I just want to thank everyone. I'm really proud of the work we've done, especially what we've accomplished during a pandemic. I mean, so thank you.
So I have a few words to say as well. I wrote mine down just because I'm a little emotional tonight, but I want to make sure that I say everything I wanted to say. So I want to say first, thank you to Janelle on her hard work on our equity, and also for our equity coaches. Thank you for all that you are doing and have done. Also, a big thank you to our superintendent for your wisdom and support, and also a big thank you to our directors. I am very proud to work alongside of each of you. But most of all, I'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you who have shared your thoughts, voices, and experiences. Today, in my view, is a monumental historical day. The moment that I was appointed and elected onto this board, being able to take part in forming an equity policy has been an incredible honor. When I first started in this district, I was one of maybe a handful of students of color. Now our district is full of diversity. I've been blessed to have an education filled with amazing teachers, teachers' assistants, and coaches. Even though I've had many great experiences, I also experienced discrimination, racism, and many microaggressions. Even with these experiences, I was able to graduate and succeed. We cannot say this for many of our students. Many of our students haven't been provided the right framework to be able to thrive, succeed, or learn. This equity policy is providing our district permission to ask critical questions and to look at these things historically we haven't been able to change before. Providing access to all of our students. This policy makes us accountable to our students, staff, and community. Today, I believe we are taking a step into the right direction, but I also acknowledge that these coming steps are not going to be easy. This is such an amazing step, and I'm so happy we are implementing this policy. Implementing a policy like this is also very hard, especially for those who have been marginalized. We know that this is the beginning of the work, not the end. I want to thank every single one of you who has been worked in making Vancouver Public Schools an inclusive institution where we make all kids feel welcome. To my students, staff, and community who has felt underrepresented, I see you, I hear you, and I feel you. So please keep speaking up. And as our Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor said, hasta que no tengamos igualdad en educación, no tendremos sociedad igualitaria. Until we get equality in education, we won't have equal society. So thank you.
Thank you, Sandra, for that, because you said a lot of the things that I wanted to say, but you said it so much more eloquently than I'm going to. I want to reiterate the thanks to Janelle and all of the staff, Dr. Snell, the equity coaches, everyone who's worked on this at the district, but then of course all of the community voices that were part of the process as well, which really makes this a really powerful process and a really powerful policy, I feel. I also want to thank Kathy and Sandra for their work in developing the policy on the board's behalf, because you guys put a lot of the thought and language together for us. And so I really appreciate your guys' work as well. I think that I agree with everything that everyone has said. This is just such a point of pride for the district and for the board. And I think of all the things that we have accomplished in the last few years, this is easily the most important work that we've done. And I'm really proud to be part of it. And I'm proud to work with you guys and with everyone at the district and in our community. It's, as has been stated, a historic moment for Vancouver. And I'm just so very pleased with the policy as it has turned out. And I'm excited about the work ahead. Like Sandra said, this is not the end, right? There's still lots of work ahead. But this is a guide for us to follow and a framework for us to help focus our work and make sure that the work is as meaningful as the policy, as thoughtful and intentional as the policy. So I just thank everybody for all of their work, and I'm just so excited for the vote.
Thank you. I echo a lot of what my fellow directors have said too. I'm excited that we're finally at this point to be able to vote on the equity policy. It seems like we've had a long journey to get here. And there's been lots of different groups. This policy, the draft policy, has gone through some revisions. It's had a lot of different eyes and voices on it in developing it. But as others have mentioned, this vote tonight is not the end of the journey. It really is the start of everything ahead of us. You know, I know equity has kind of become a hot topic in a lot of arenas, and you know, it does sadden me that there are, you know, those who either don't understand it or, you know, maybe mischaracterize the intent of what equity is. You know, the policy and then the procedures that are going to follow it are not about handouts or unfair advantages. It's really about eliminating barriers that some students face that others do not. It's about leveling that playing field so that all students can succeed. Our data shows that there's predictability of outcomes by demographic group, and our goal is to eliminate that predictability. And each of our students deserves that access to opportunities, resources, and support that they need to be successful. So I'm excited that we are at this point, and I'm proud of the work that has gone into it, and excited about the work that is to come. With that, if there is no further discussion, we will go ahead and vote on the equity policy. Director Decker.
I approve.
Director Smith.
Approve.
Director Sproul.
Approve.
Director Zavala.
Approve.
And I also vote to approve. The motion passes unanimously. With that, that was our last action item of the evening. Next on the list is the Board of Directors report. Are there any board members that have any reports or announcements? I just wanted to share some of our upcoming meeting dates just for our community to be aware of. Next week on February 15th, we have our Committee of the Whole meeting. Our Committee of the Whole meetings are to discuss items that will be on the next month's agenda. So if you are curious about some of the things that will be on our March agenda, the Committee of the Whole meeting, that's where we will discuss those things. And then on the 22nd, we have our board study session. Both of those meetings will be Zoom. Both of those are public meetings, so our public is welcome to attend virtually. I did also want to point out that this week is National School Counselor Week. And so I just wanted to make everybody aware, and I wanted to also thank our amazing school counselors that we have in Vancouver and just across all of our public schools and other school settings. School counselors are doing amazing work, and I want you to know that we recognize the work that you're doing, and thank you. If there are no other items, we are going to now recess into an executive session for the purpose of discussing the performance of a public employee. There will be no action to follow, and we will recess for approximately 20 minutes. And at the end of that time, I will come back to the meeting to adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are back from our executive session. It is 7:59 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.